All right. I think we are live now. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for another North Van Arts live stream. Today, I am going to be interviewing an artist named Nicola Morgan. I'm very excited, so we're going to have her join us in a little bit. But for everybody just joining us, today we are doing 1 out of 4 Artist Talk live streams. So we're very excited about this. It's all very new, but we're very excited to be launching this as part of Art in the Garden Online, which is the 2020 version of Art in the Garden, an event that's been going on for 20 years that has always had visual artists and musicians and everybody literally under the sun celebrating local gardens and nature and the environment. So today I have given you a little bit of my local environment. These are my best houseplants because my balcony is quite noisy. So I will not be streaming from there, but let's check in with Nicola Morgan and see if I can add her in the next minute. There we are. Shortly. So everybody, if you have questions you'd like to add to mine, I would love it if you could send in some questions. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
So good to see you.
Oh, this is great.
Oh, you look wonderful.
This works. This is terrific. You've got me at my painting desk. I'm right in the middle of doing some work, so this is great.
Fantastic. Yes. So Nikki or Nicola, you're joining us from your studio, and I was wondering if you could introduce yourself and chat a little bit about your medium.
Yes. Well, first thing off, Nikki or Nicola, I answer to both, but when I paint, it's under Nicola Morgan. Website is under Nicola Morgan. So, and here I am in my studio, at the Welsh Shoot Studio in North Vancouver in Pemberton. And it's great for doing social isolation work because we all have our own studios here. There are 8 artists, but we all have our own space. So it's great. And I just feel so fortunate at this time during this pandemic to be an artist. I really do. First of all, to be a resident of the North Shore, which is incredible, but to also be an artist and to have that way of letting out all sorts of emotions and feelings and expressions and new discoveries, because we're all finding a new way to be right now. We're finding a new way to be a person in our community, a person in our family, and of course to be an artist as well. So here I am.
Yeah, very important to for everybody who perhaps needs a little bit more practice. It's really good to express yourself and to practice getting to express your feelings, and art is one of the best ways you can do that, in my opinion. So what kinds of art do you do? What are your medium or mediums?
Well, I don't restrict myself to one medium. You can see there's a large painting in the background. That's an unstretched canvas. That's working with acrylic. So I work with acrylic. My background is actually a children's author and illustrator. So I have worked a lot with watercolor and gouache and illustration work. For the past 10 years, I've really been exploring the medium of oil and cold wax. I love the richness of it. I love teaching the process to people because it lends itself to abstraction so well. It also helps to debunk the myth of how scary it is to work with oil. I tell everybody we don't use any chemicals. We just use baby oil, vegetable oil, whatever, and to clean up. And I think everyone is just so happy and relieved to know that it's an easy medium to work with, and it's just wonderful to explore abstraction. And right now, during the pandemic, I have, like everybody, honed down, made my life sparse, made my art practice quite sparse. I'm not doing any shopping, like we're not doing any shopping in our regular lives. I'm using what I can find around my studio right now. I'm working small, and I'm working on a series called the Shelter Series. So it's exploring shelters. It's a word that we use very liberally right now in Western culture, that we're all sheltering. But after an amazing, eye-opening, life-changing trip to Africa, South Africa and Zimbabwe, I see that sheltering has a whole different concept, and our definition of sheltering is not what it is in the third world. and yet we are all dealing with the same war on this pandemic globally. So I am concerned about the people in South Africa, in the townships, and in the villages in Zimbabwe. And I've been working on this sheltering series, which is assemblages of all sorts of things that I can find in my studio. And I can't point the phone down, but I can actually hold up a piece that I'm working on right now. And I don't ever really use anything that isn't mine. So to keep the piece alive and to be very much of mine, it's not just a simple collage. The pieces and the spaces of color and elements in these constructions are actually from old paintings, old prints of mine. So they
And
still
are
have
these all
brush
materials?
Yeah.
Sorry, are these all materials from your studio or from your studio and home, perhaps?
Studio and a few things I brought from home, but mostly from my studio. And I like these spaces to have my sense of color. You can see my brush strokes in some of these ripped up pieces of paper. I'm even using some of my, some of my palette. I don't know if you can see this, but anyways, I'm even using some of my old palette paper here that's got, blops of paint on. And I want these to be quite alive, even though they're stagnant pieces. So they're great pieces for me to work on in terms of technical working out space, but also I'm thinking about shelters the whole time. So they are very much based on some of the shelters that I've seen, in South Africa, in the townships, and again, thinking of sheltering here. And we're not of the woods here, and we certainly have a lot of people here on the North Shore that need shelter as well.
No, I'm absolutely reminded of that. As I've told you, I live and work in Lower Lonsdale, and we have a lot of art spaces here, but I see the same thing. People are making makeshift shelter in many spaces that are not traditionally made for that, but people are doing what they can with materials that they have. So I think that's really interesting that your artwork kind of reflects that that innovation that humans, we just have to do worldwide all at the same time. So it's so crazy. And thank you for sharing a little bit more about that, because I think for a lot of our audience on Instagram and our followers and members of North Van Arts community, they're wondering, as artists, we want to have hope and work. But I was curious to know how, if you could share a little bit more about your creative process. What types of things are sort of sparking inspiration for you, or how do you find yourself most readily able to create?
Well, that's a really interesting question, Andrew, because I think when the whole shutdown started, we were given permission to have all this time to do all these things. Now, as an artist, you'd think, oh, well, gosh, this is great. I can just jump in and do this. And for some weird and strange reason, and I don't think I was alone. In fact, I know I wasn't alone. There was like a couple of weeks of starting projects, not finishing projects. It was like almost too much permission to do.
No
And
deadlines, right?
I think, it's like giving someone a very long leash. They kind of just, sit there and go, well, I don't know. And then it's like anything, I think, when it comes to creativity, you just have to have the patience to sit and wait and wonder when and how it's going to come out. But it will come out. There's always a time in an artist's life where you stop and you think, that's it, I'm done. Nothing's coming, nothing's happening. And then you really just have to call on past experience and be reassured that it will come out. I was waiting for some of my experiences from being in South Africa to come out. I was wondering how they were ever going to come out as well. And I wouldn't have ever imagined I would have been able to put this all together in a certain project like this. But it just comes. And I think exposing yourself, showing up to the studio, showing up to the day, and giving that time over. It's a slow grind to get the engine going, but it's sure going now. I can't even stop. It's just like they're just pouring out of me. I'm just really enjoying them.
That's really great to hear, and really great advice too for any emerging artists watching, that that perhaps it can feel like I have so much time, I should be doing everything. But reflecting on your past experiences sounds like definitely something that can help you shape what your priorities are going forward. Because that's a big thing I'm hearing about is you feel like you have so many passion projects, but having to prioritize your passion feels a little weird and strange for artists and everyone, I presume.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
said for sure.
Well, I was wondering as well, a couple other questions pertaining to art in the garden. Because as you know, you're going to be joining us from your garden May 30th, the weekend, May 30th and 31st, Art in the Garden Live. We are having these musical visual artist collaborations. We're very excited to have you, Nikki, as one of our 4 artists involved in this live streaming event. So if you're watching now, make sure to tune in for that at the end of the month. But in talking about how music can affect art, how art affects music, and as well with our natural surroundings and our gardens and our environment. As you said, living on the North Shore, we're so lucky to have a really beautiful, lush environment here that needs preservation and protection. And so, yeah, I wonder how your natural surroundings and how you feel your environment can affect your artistic practice.
Oh, I think you can't be affected by the natural environment if you live on the North Shore of Vancouver. In fact, I think if you live in British Columbia anywhere, it's a huge part of your life, whether or not you actually recognize it consciously, but I think it's in everything we do. I also am lucky enough to have a house with a small garden, and I'm finding that I'm approaching the garden, the cultivation of the garden, and the composition of the garden in a way that I would my paintings as well. You know, looking at it in terms of blocks of color, texture, what works, what doesn't work, and also just that serendipitous way of allowing the garden to react to how I'm doing. And I love that concept of painting, of not having complete control. I'm very much a reactionary painter. I will activate a page or a canvas, and then as soon as it's activated, I'll start to react to that. And I find with gardening too, you can't anticipate the results. You can try and plan, but any expectations, I actually find in any expectations in any aspect of life are usually probably the worst and most dangerous thing to have, because they never ever happen the way that you think they're going to happen. They can surpass or not quite come up to scratch, but either way, they are what they are, and they're just so spectacularly exciting when things just happen like that. So I'm in terms of a cultivated garden, yes, I love that. That really helps me to understand where I'm going with my art, and my art really helps to inform how I go as a gardener. And then nature, I'm in it all the time. I think we all are, and it's moving, it's movable art. It's always changing, growing, and alternating, and yeah. So
Yeah, you've got me thinking about my garden now and how maybe there are some colors I could work on and improve a little more with. But you know, it's taking the time to look at that and switch things up, because yeah, it definitely right now expectations are so hard to have that yeah, we're all kind of in this together and on the same path forward, hopefully soon as well.
right.
Well, the other question I wanted to chat about was music. And so I know, of course, from the past, you have had some experiences painting to music or creating art to music. And I was wondering if you could speak to how music might influence your art, if and how.
Well, music is another big chunk of my life, and that's what took me to Africa. Was actually I'm a member of a large community choir here in North Vancouver. I love the that communal voice that we all have, and being able to travel to different countries and see that is just a universal language and a universal need that we have creatively to sing. Um, I often challenge my students when they come to my workshop. I say, as children, we all sang and we all drew and we danced and we did all these expressive things without ever thinking about them. And somehow in life as adults, we still sing. We sing privately, but we'll sing in the shower, we'll sing in the car, and we'll dance, you know, socially, or just dance in whichever way we want, fitness or whatever. But drawing and art is something that people need to be given permission to do. But music is a big part of my life, and I do often have music playing when I'm in the studio. And I don't consciously paint to the music, but I know that the music enters me and will affect the work that I'm doing. So if I'm listening to a certain music and the tempo and the rhythm is picking up, I'll notice that my brush strokes are getting shorter or quicker, or my actions will be getting quicker or shorter, because painting to me is a very gestural and physical thing. So if I'm working on a large piece like this, I'll be approaching it in a much faster way. And if the music slows down, I'll be getting more pensive. And sometimes I'll even just sit down and just look and stop, which is also a big part of painting.
Well, I imagine as a member of a choir, the answer is probably every genre, but would there be any genres you really like practicing art to that you'd recommend?
Oh, well, you know, yeah, usually just acoustic music is great, because I am a very a narrative. I'm a very narratively attracted person. So if there is words to a song and the lyrics to the song, I'll often get very affected by that. And actually, if you were to ask anyone in my choir, I'm always the one that puts up my hand and goes, "But what's it all about?" I just always need to know, what's it all about? Or I'll come up with my own story about what's it all about if it's all very abstract. So in terms of genre, I wouldn't ever say I'm confined to that. It's the same as in terms of restricting myself to a certain medium in painting. I'm a pretty open book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a lot of theaters and choirs where we celebrate every music, and so I'm the same way. That for me, I think every genre affects your artistic practice differently, and whether you're painting something or writing even a narrative, that storytelling I find can, yeah, have a lot of different directions it moves in, depending on on what you're working on as well, and what you're kind
Exactly, exactly. And I'm really excited about the Art in the Garden collaboration. I see that Ava Marie has just joined on here. And
yeah.
and when you let me know who it was that I was matched with, I turned her on Spotify and listened to the most amazing song that I thought was so relevant to the work that I'm doing and to the pandemic and us all standing together and being strong. And I don't know if she wrote that piece specifically for this time period, but I do hope that she plays and sings that piece because it resonated strongly with me.
Well, we'll have to find out. We'll see. Tune in for Ava's live stream artist talk in a few weeks' time. Thank you so much, Nikki, for joining us today. And I think that's a great spot to end it there. If anybody has any extra questions, didn't see some in the chat, combed to look, but you can always let us know and follow at Nicola Morgan Studio. I believe I have that right.
Yep.
And if you want to check out Ava's music as well, Ava Maria Safai, everywhere. She's got some great music to check out. And Nicola, would you remind me your website, nicolamorgan.ca?
Yep, nicolamorgan.ca.
Okay, so everyone can check out some of your previous artworks there and perhaps get in touch.
Can I just put in one little plug? The shelter series that I'm working on right now, it's quite a series, and they are actually on the Instagram. I am actually selling those, and the money is going to Covenant House. So I'm looking at places that do sheltering locally, thinking of sheltering and helping out those in need. So send me a message, and you'll see all the information on the Instagram and on my website.
Yeah, if anybody can go and support local art as well as local charity and yeah, just their local community, please do so. And yeah, make sure to check out at Nicola Morgan Studio.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining us. And to everybody else, thank you for joining us together. And please leave any kind of comments, questions, likes, love, you know, you can do it all. So send us that. And we will try to create some more of these for you soon.
Good.
See you then.
Bye-bye, everybody.